All right, everybody, it is me, Katie, your founder of MOMnation, that is, and I am here. I was just telling Crystal, by the way, I'm here with Crystal Silvas. Everybody say hello to her. She is our WordPress website guru, and we're going to talk with her a little bit about that today. But before we hopped on, I was just talking with Crystal a little bit and telling her, hey, I haven't done one of these live and learns since I think like mid-December. And so the group's going to be like, oh, what is going on, Katie? Live and Learns are back, guys. And if you don't know what a Live and Learn is, it's a bit different than our podcast. Our Live and Learn is when we get on, I get on one-on-one with an awesome mama like Crystal, and they help either teach us something, teach us a new skill, or share knowledge that is really, really useful for us. So those of us that are out there that are looking to build a website, or maybe you did and you're not really sure kind of what to do next. Maybe you're an influencer, a blogger, a small business owner, or just a mama looking to have a website to share information on your family, pictures, things like that with your friends and family. So Crystal, take it away. Tell us a little bit about who you are and who's our friend we have with us today.
Yeah, so this is Amy. She is too. Amy, can you say hi?
Hi, Amy. Oh my
Good
gosh,
job. You're playing Peppa Pig. Good job.
Oh, Peppa's my favorite.
It took us quite a while to get there. I was very adamant against Peppa Pig, but then we started watching it in Japanese and switched over to English. Now we're pretty good.
Now we're good.
So anyways, yeah, so I own a marketing business. I work primarily with female entrepreneurs and bloggers turned course creators, really building out their websites, sales funnels, and just general marketing strategy. So a lot of times I'll meet with women that are, we're just all trying to build our own empires, crushing the patriarchy, all that jazz. And so I will get together with them and we have strategy sessions to really take stock in where their business is at, where they want to be, and how we can make that happen while still being there for our families and, living a life on our own terms and not having to slave away at the 9 to 5 that is, someone else's schedule entirely. So really, I am like all about marketing with integrity, none of that bro marketing or anything like that. And really just building a life that works for you, works for your family, and not having to not have a career or sacrifice your own financial well-being to be there for your family.
I love that. And I feel like a lot of our moms in MOMnation are in that spot, whether they be bloggers or small business owners, influencers, that kind of thing. And they're just really looking, look, how can I do my thing here, but still, like, I'm still a mom and I'm still a wife and I'm still, commander of the household and all of that jazz.
I still like to make dinner every night for everyone. So
Right. And your husband's lucky. Mine is the dinner maker. He's like, damn, you should hang out with Crystal a little bit more. Maybe learn something. But let's get started with the different website platforms. Now there's like Wix and WordPress, and I'm sure you know the whole gamut of them. But are there any that in particular are your favorites? And kind of run me through pros and cons of maybe the most popular.
Yeah, so my favorite is WordPress. And the reason for that is that it really is like the sky's the limit with it. There are so many different features for it, and it's an open source platform. So basically what that means is that a community works on it. It's not just one company controlling the entire thing. It's a community source project, and different developers that have, different passions all contribute to this platform. And it's been around forever, and well, not really forever, but quite a while in the internet space. And almost 30% of the internet is actually ran on WordPress. So like if you were to go to whitehouse.com, it's ran on WordPress. So
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's used across the world. Like they have huge WordPress conferences that are like grassroots, all these developers getting together in
Amy is not having that.
No, she doesn't want the light on. I've got a ring light. No, sorry.
Oh, you're totally fine.
Yeah,
We're all dealing with it.
So that is like, that's really one of the reasons I really like it, because I have always been like, yes, grassroots everything, guerrilla marketing, like the little man, let's stand up for the little man. But it also means that you can do whatever you want with it. You can go into the original source code if that's something you choose to do, and build out something entirely custom. You're not going to get that with most of your other platforms, because
Gotcha.
you are limited to what features they give you. The other thing with that is that all of these features, like if you were able to work with a really good developer, or you wanted to learn how to code, and I know that's super, super crazy daunting, but it's totally doable. I mean, I'm self-taught, so I've been working with WordPress for a good 10 years, so it's a long time, but it's not as crazy as it actually sounds.
As it sounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just saw your face light right up. Like, you must love coding, because you were like, yeah, coding.
So it's something, so here's a funny little segue, is that, so I have a degree in theatrical design. I went to the University of Washington and majored in drama and did nothing but costumes, hair, and special effects makeup. In my last quarter of college, I took an HTML class that I failed. Now, I was a straight A student.
Oh.
I hated that class. I failed it by 0.04.
Oh my goodness.
And it caused me to not graduate for 4 years. I went back and eventually graduated with my 4 credits that I needed. But so that's coming. So I love to code, and that's coming from someone who like almost didn't graduate from college because of a darn little HTML class. But now I love digging into it. And it really just is how you learn it and how, like, what you're going to use it for. So, but you don't have to know how to code to use WordPress. So that's also the beauty of WordPress, is that
Right.
there are plugins that allow you to build out a website that looks as if it was coded by hand, but you don't have to learn a single piece of code. There's drag and drop editors that are absolutely amazing, and just about anything that you want your site to do, there's a plugin for that. Some of them are free, some of them are premium things or plugins. It just kind of depends on where you land. But that's why I like WordPress, because it is so flexible. And if you want to have e-commerce on it, you can have e-commerce on it. If you want to build out, if you're building a learning course, like an e-course, you can have that housed on your WordPress site, and you own it all. You can take it from one host to another host. So if you're having issues with your website's host and you just don't like their customer service anymore, you're not tied to them, because WordPress is open source. So say you're with like Bluehost or GoDaddy, and you're like, I don't like their customer service. By the way, don't use Bluehost. You can take your website without having to redesign your website to a brand new host. And that's really nice. You can't do that with other popular platforms like Wix or Squarespace.
Right. I had
However,
Squarespace and tried, and that's very, very difficult. We had to rebuild our entire website. This was last year, my whole real estate website, and there's a lot of content on there, and we had to rebuild that all in WordPress. And thank goodness for my staff that knows how to do that, because I was like, I'm dead. They're like, no, we're not. It's just going to take a little bit of work. So
yeah, no, like anytime if you build in Wix or you build in Word or in Squarespace, anytime you need to move your site somewhere else, because the base code is different and you don't own it, you technically don't even like you own your domain name, but any content that you put on there, you technically own, but they can choose to take your site down for any infraction. So you're not guaranteed a website just because you've built it in Squarespace or Wix. Like you can actually, depending on your niche, especially if you're in more of like the CBD or anything like that, you're not going to be able to really run a site long term there, because you run the risk of them saying, actually, no, this stuff, we're not sure if it's okay federally, so we're going to shut your site down. And then you don't have any way to recover it. So there are risks there depending on what field you're in. But I will say WordPress isn't for anyone or everyone. Isn't for anyone, isn't for everyone. So like, I love it. But if you're just getting started out and you don't want to deal with hiring a developer, you don't want to wait months or learn it, because WordPress does have a fairly steep learning curve, and that's what turns most people off from it.
Yeah.
There's some really great courses out there online that will teach you how to use WordPress. I've been working on one, but I don't have a launch date for it yet. But with that said, if you're just starting out, or if you're just looking to, have like a wedding website or something like that, Wix is a great option for that. Shopify is really, really great for e-commerce. So I actually use Shopify a lot if I'm working with a client that is shipping out physical products. I'll set them up in Shopify, because the e-commerce side of it, like the back end, is a lot more user friendly. But you're really limited in what your store looks like then. You really know when a shop has been built in Shopify, even if it doesn't say powered by Shopify at the bottom, because it just has a certain look. And then with Squarespace is really great for the designer. But it has limitations even in its design, like with its spacers. Like, the one thing that frustrates me in Squarespace is like the spacers can only go so small, and I'm like, no, I want that space just a little bit smaller. But so you don't have as much control even over your design. It's definitely more user friendly. But if you're looking at, like a 5 or 10 year plan on growing your business, or really building out a blog, because that's another thing that WordPress is really great for, is blogging. That's originally what it was for. So most bloggers, you go to a recipe website or, home organization website, they're most likely powered by WordPress. There are benefits to other sites like Squarespace. A lot of that is going to be that you don't have to worry about updates with Squarespace. You're going to have to worry about updates with WordPress. So there's always going to be plugin updates. You have to make sure that you get your own hosting. Squarespace hosts all of their websites. So it is all in one for Squarespace, and it's the same with Wix. They both host their websites. They're all in one. But if you're looking at building a business and you're hoping to scale it to, like 100K or more, you probably should just save yourself the time and go with WordPress in the beginning. It might be a little bit more expensive up front just because it's not quite as easy. It's not quite as easy. Yeah, it's not quite as easy to build on WordPress as like a newbie as it is Wix or Squarespace. But ultimately, you save more money. It's more cost efficient to go with WordPress, because each extra thing you need to add on to like Squarespace or Wix, it's another additional monthly cost. It's never just a flat fee. But
I can attest.
Again, it's pretty user friendly. So if you're starting a business and you're not sure whether you're actually going to like push forward past a year or 2 or 3, I could totally see using Wix or Squarespace as like a starter. Just know that eventually you're probably going to move to WordPress or a completely custom developed website.
I totally agree with you. And I went through that same thing. I mean, I just told you we were on Squarespace for a couple of years. And then I started wanting to add the podcast. My husband and I do a podcast called Real with Matt and Katie. And I wanted to add that to our website. I wanted to add, this, that, and the other thing. And so finally, the only thing I could do to get everything I wanted was to move to WordPress. So now I've been paying for Squarespace, all of the things that you said, the add-ons, all that stuff. And now I was down for a couple of days and had to pay because I needed to pay somebody smarter than me to build my WordPress site, right? And so I had to turn around and pay for all of that. And then I had that downtime, and we have a very, very high producing real estate team. We can't have that downtime.
Wow.
So, I can completely agree with what you're saying, and in fact happened to me. So those of you out there that, if you're like Crystal said, if this is your gig, like this is going to be your gig for the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, forever, then definitely looking at WordPress, I think, is important. How about SEO? Let's talk a little bit about that. That is probably a whole ball of wax that we can do a live and learn in and of itself.
Or like 20.
Yeah, right. No kidding. But do you have any quick tips for moms that are, maybe not super tech savvy, or just getting, maybe they are tech savvy, but they're just getting into this and getting into the SEO realm? Any advice for them?
Yeah, so first, just in case anyone isn't aware of what SEO stands for, it's search engine optimization. So basically what that means is that we're making your site easy for the website or the search engines like Google. So when search engines go through your site, it's called crawling, and they're like AI technology. With all the algorithms and all of that jazz, they're called spiders. So it's kind of funny because spiders web. So when the spiders crawl the web and they crawl your site, they're looking, they want your site to be easy for them to see immediately, like, what is this site about? How is it going to benefit? And does this match what these search queries are? So SEO is king when it comes to organic search results. Now there is paid SEO. That's a whole nother ball game. You could hire an agency and pay them like $5,000 a month to do all sorts of SEO and paid SEO. It's pretty intense. So SEO is this really huge thing. The other really big thing to really pay attention to with SEO is it's not a short-term game. It is most definitely a long-term game. Like, you want to make sure that you're putting in SEO best practices into your site now, even though you're probably not going to see results on that work that you're doing for another good 6 to 12 months minimum. Because it does really take time, and it takes constant tweaking as well. So it's definitely not a science. It's more of an art, and you have to really know your customer. So my first tip with SEO is make sure that you have a solid customer avatar, so you know who your ideal client is, how they're going to look for you. Because if you don't have an idea of what kind of keywords might be used to find your website, then you're going to have a hard time really driving traffic, because you want to focus on specific keywords. And now when I say keywords, we think of a single word. So in SEO, there are two different types of keywords. There are going to be your single word keywords. And then she's bringing her table in.
She's got work to do. Okay, guys.
Yeah, she's busy.
She's on top of it.
But so the other thing with keywords is there's something called a long tail keyword, and that's basically a phrase. So that, I know that can confuse people a little bit when they're first getting into the SEO world, because you're like, wait, but long tail keyword, like, is that a compound word? No, it's like, you could be a full sentence. So you want to make sure that you know your client. Now, the second thing, and this is the thing that I see the most often, especially when I'm going in and doing audits for optimization for bloggers, because I work with a lot of bloggers who are creating courses or they're getting ready to put ad networks on their websites to monetize their blogs. So I'll go in and look at their back end, do a full audit, take stock of where they are, make sure that they've got that their site isn't overloaded, because most bloggers, they're DIYing it, which is totally fine, but you can end up with a lot of conflicts, and we're getting information from here and here and here and here and here and here and here, and it can be a lot, and you can start implementing conflicting information that doesn't work very well with each other. So, sorry, that was a little bit of a segue. My second tip is when you're working with images on your website, make sure that you're using alt image tags. So what an alt image tag is it's a description of what the image is. So if it's like a decorative background or something, you don't need to put an alt image tag for that. But say, like Katie, on your website, if you've got a picture of you and your husband, sorry, I haven't actually been to your real estate website, so I'm not 100% sure. But if you have a picture of yourself, and I don't know, do you have a dog?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. So if you had like a picture of you and your dog, you would be like, your alt description could be Katie in front of her house with her dog, such
Layla.
and such, Layla. So that's one way to label that. Now, how you're going to label your images really depends on, again, your audience. So if you're a blogger, you're probably going to use your name and like your kids' names and your husband's names, depending on whether you mask those or not for your online persona.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using more of if you're doing more of e-commerce or things like that, and you're expecting people to maybe not return quite as often, like maybe you're not quite building that blog relationship with them, I would probably actually, with like a real estate website, be like woman Katie in parentheses with her dog Layla, because they might not actually know that, okay, well, a search engine isn't going to know that Katie is necessarily a female.
Right.
So you want to look at those kind of things, and you also don't want to keyword stuff. So what keyword stuffing is just adding a bunch of random keywords that are relevant to your audience, but not relevant to the image, because that can be a negative thing for your SEO.
Mm-hmm.
Because search engines have gotten a lot smarter. Keyword stuffing was a really big thing probably 5-6 years ago, and it was suggested to all of the bloggers to really get organic traffic, but search engine algorithms have gotten wised up to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that alt tags are my number 2 recommendation is because it plays 2 roles. So it's not just for search engine optimization, but it's also for accessibility. Because if you've got someone with a vision impairment surfing the web with a screen reader, they're not going to really see those images, but their screen reader is going to read to them what that alt image text says. So if you don't have alt image text, they don't know what those images are. Like, the screen reader will say that there's an image, but it's not going to tell them what it is.
Mm.
And accessibility right now, I mean, really always it's been a big thing, but right now it's really, really a big thing, because recently there has actually been people that just go to websites and check for accessibility to make sure that these businesses have ADA accessible or ADA compliant websites.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you don't, I mean, sometimes nothing happens, but there are these people that are kind of trolling the internet for those with malicious intent. So there's actually recently been business owners that have been sued for their websites not being ADA accessible. So that's another thing that's really important. So, alt tags are going to be your first step. In WordPress, alt tags are added in your media library. So when you upload your image, there will be a section that says title, there'll be a section that says alt image text, and then there'll be an area where you can add like a caption. So you add your alt image text in your media library to your site or to your picture. Different platforms have different areas of adding it in. In Wix, if you click on your image that you've added in and go to the extra options, there'll be an area for you to enter in your alt image tag. And same with Shopify. Shopify, if you're adding in like products, inside of the product itself, there'll be an area that you can go in each image to add in your alt image text. And I'm not quite sure where it's at in Squarespace, but I know it has it.
It does.
And speaking of SEO and then the pros and cons of the other platforms, WordPress is also the best for SEO because it has the easiest SEO structure for the spiders to crawl, because you have the most options to add in SEO at every step of the way, whereas Squarespace and Shopify and Wix all have more limited SEO capabilities. They've gotten a lot better over the years, but they're definitely not the best.
Mm-hmm. True that.
So if you're going to rely on organic traffic, that's definitely a big thing.
Awesome. So we talked a lot about WordPress. We got some tips. Thank you very much. You probably saw I was frantically writing notes, because you know what my next phone call is after I get off with you. We talked about the pros and cons of different website platforms. Any other WordPress basics? I know you slipped a lot of WordPress basics in there, but any other WordPress basics that you quite like that you haven't shared yet?
Yeah, so I feel like the secret weapon in my back pocket is a plugin called Beaver Builder.
Beaver Builder, I'm writing that down too.
So there's two different plugins that I really like, which it's going to be Beaver Builder and then Elementor. And it really just kind of depends on how you like to work. But both of these are basically website builders. So you can use them with any theme, because WordPress uses themes, regardless of whether it's a paid theme or not. That's just the basis of a WordPress site, is a theme. And what Beaver Builder and Elementor do is allow you to actually have more of an experience like Squarespace or Wix, where it's a drag and drop builder. I like Beaver Builder because it's the lightest of the WordPress builders. And when I say lightest, that means that it's going to be less code heavy. It's not going to bog down your site as much as other builders are going to. So when I'm working with a blogger, a lot of times I won't use a builder at all, depending on their skill level. But if they're not comfortable with that, we'll install Beaver Builder. And that allows them to still make small edits and things like that to their site design without having to learn to code. So if you're thinking about, starting your own WordPress site, Beaver Builder has a free option and it has a pro option. Of course, I like the pro option because it has a lot more capability. But and Elementor also has a free option and a pro option. But that is like, as a WordPress basic, that would be like the first plugin I would have someone install if they were learning WordPress, is you would go into the plugin section and install a builder. And that way you're not struggling with trying to fit your grand idea into a theme that just doesn't work with what you want to show up. The other kind of WordPress basic would be, and this is where a lot of people get tripped up, is there's actually two WordPresses. There's WordPress.com and WordPress.org.
Right.
So WordPress.com is going to be a hosted version still of WordPress, but kind of a little less powerful, not quite as open source. Basically, the com is for company, whereas the org is for organization. And in this case, we're talking more about like more similar to a nonprofit because it's, it's open source and community-based software.
Mm-hmm.
I always recommend going with WordPress.org because it's actually a lot more difficult to move things from WordPress.com to WordPress.org because basically WordPress.org is essentially like a super powered version of WordPress.com. WordPress.com also partners with Bluehost, which isn't the worst in the world, but it's not my favorites. I usually really recommend people don't use Bluehost as a host just because. So they're really, really popular, and this is going to be, my controversial take of the day. The reason I don't like them is they're owned by a larger company called Endurance International Group, and that group kind of buys up these really amazing hosts, lays off 30% of their staff at their customers' detriment, and runs these hosting companies that previously had amazing reputations into the ground. So Bluehost, especially for a beginner, they can seem really appealing because they have a really low price ticket or like monthly cost.
Right.
I think they have something like as low as $2 a month for hosting.
Oh, wow.
But believe me that you will pay for it in the time that you spend with their customer service when your site inevitably goes down because of their network issues. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Really, any of the companies that are owned by Endurance International Group, I go on and on and on. The two biggest ones are Bluehost and HostGator. I recommend going with like SiteGround or Flywheel, WordPress Engine. Those are all really great. So is Green Geeks. They're all really great hosting companies that have fantastic customer service. They're really responsive, and their uptimes are just fantastic. So you don't really have to worry about your site going down. And if you do, it's usually up pretty fast, as long as it's not something that's actually wrong with your site itself.
Got you.
Oh, that was a lot.
No, great advice, though. I mean, these are things that, especially if you're very new to this world, or you're just getting started, or you're kind of DIYing some stuff because you can't afford to have somebody else do it. Like this stuff we need to know. And honestly, if I would have heard that WordPress.com versus WordPress.org little spiel you just did, like you'd have saved me more time, because I have another website disaster that happened with actually MOMnationUSA.com, was previously on .com, WordPress.com, and we have moved it to .org for lots of reasons, but specifically what you had said. So I have lived what you are telling people not to live. I will support and agree with you, because it was a total pain. But anyway,
I know that WordPress.com can look really attractive when you're starting out, because a lot like Wix, they have the ability to set up a free website.
Yep.
So that can be really attractive, but really, believe me, it's worth it to just shell out the little bit of extra money and get your domain name, get set up with self-hosted, and build on WordPress.org.
Oh, 100%. Because I think I had my WordPress.com site up in like a night. And, I'm no web builder. So I was like, psh, I got this. You know what I mean? Yeah, I really did. I showed me. So anyway, Crystal, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And Amy too. It was awesome. I learned a lot. I wrote down a full page of notes. Don't know if you can see that. But thank you. I appreciate this so much. Now, if any of our audience members are in that spot where I was, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that Katie made, because, I'm warning you guys, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Both are Crystal Silvas Digital or crystalsilvas.com.
Awesome. And I have both of those links here in the show notes. So really, really easy, mamas. Just click on that, get in touch with Crystal. She's super sweet. I've known her for a couple of months now, huh, Crystal? We're still getting to know each other. But she's awesome. She really knows her stuff, guys. So definitely check her out. Thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye. Bye, Amy. Oh, she's waved.
Can you say bye?
Bye. See you later.